Chairman. In your presentation, you mentioned something about a medicine wheel. So pardon my ignorance, what is a medicine wheel as a traditional method of healing?
Medicine wheel, according to my understanding, is using a holistic approach of treating essentially the person instead of the illness or diagnosis, treating the person as indigenous people did for hundreds of years and millennia. That's essentially what it is.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good.
Yep.
My next question is that, if I understand correctly, is that you formed a waste management company?
That's part of the CA.
Okay.
Waste management, considering this day and age and what Pine House is currently involved in, we have to not take that lightly. It might be taken out of context by certain members of society. Under the collaboration agreement, waste management, as we understand it, and so does Cameco, is recycling tires or shredding pallets at the mine sites or recycling plastics and tin cans. That's the understanding of what waste management is to us under the CA. Okay.
Nothing to do with uranium or radiation or
nothing at all.
Okay.
If we did it, we'd fall under, if we are guys under the economic armor working at the mine sites, we'd have to fall under Cameco's radiation protection program, just like any other contractor.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Vilshi.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you've presented a very hopeful and rosy picture of the relationship with Cameco and what the future may hold. So what percentage of your community is employed by Cameco, either as labor there or with their businesses that you provide?
I do believe Cameco employs about 80 plus employees directly, as direct employees from our community. And our contractor, Pine House Business North, in a given year probably employs up to, I would say, 100 people off and on, depending on the nature of work we have. And then we have another privately owned contractor called Snake Lake Construction, who probably employs another 50. And I don't know who else is involved in transportation or whatever, but a very significant portion of our community relies on Cameco. I would say, generally speaking, probably $20 to $30 million flows into our community because of Cameco. So hopefully that answers the question. I can't give you a percentage. I don't have any stats.
No,
sorry.
That's good enough. In your written submission, right at the end on page 22, if you don't have it in front of you, I'll just read out the sentence. You said your review provided little insight into the cultural impacts on the community of Pine House resulting from traditional loss of use of traditional territory. And then you questioned whether the 1997 environmental impact statement considered cultural impacts to the community of Pine House. Maybe I'll ask Cameco to comment on that, on cultural impacts and whether your EIS had looked at that. Certainly from your submission, it seems like on all fronts it's been extremely positive. But were there any specific objectives you had set, and how well are you reaching those?
Grant Goddard for the record. I'm going to ask Liam Mooney to provide a response on that specific question. I would say that Cameco has been working with Northerners and making a contribution in northern Saskatchewan for over 25 years, and as Canada's largest industrial employer of Aboriginal people, we've been proud of the ongoing relationship in northern Saskatchewan and continue to look forward to the future. There are approximately 1,700 people from the north of Saskatchewan that are employed at our operations, either as employees or contractors today. And so success in the past, and looking forward to continued work together as we build a successful future. Liam?
Liam Mooney for the record. I think it's important to start the discussion around how many environmental assessments have involved the Cigar Lake project. We have the 97 joint panel proceedings under the auspices of ERPCO. We also had a 2001 assessment, a 2004 assessment, and then a 2011 assessment. And as we proceeded through those environmental assessments, and the environmental assessment framework federally has become more defined, there's been more broad-based look at traditional and Aboriginal knowledge and gathering those. So there has been an evolution in relation to assessing the potential impact of our activities and taking those into account in coming to the conclusions that the effects are acceptable.
Thank you. I'll ask you one last question. So if you take this forum as an opportunity, if there was one additional thing you'd like Chemical to do to help with the development of your community, is there anything else?
There is nothing else, in my opinion, that Cameco can do for us. Within the scope of what they can do, they have done what they can. At a certain point, it's up to the northern community, and I can only speak for Pine House. We don't ask somebody to hold our hand. We never have. We've never looked outside the window to blame everybody else for our social ills. Our leader, Mike, is very strong and adamant to say, look in the mirror, take stock of what we are, and if we know, and as for my submission, my oral submission, if we know how to hammer nails and paint handrails for Cameco, let's start there. But we have to start somewhere. When 50% of your local population is under 19 years of age, and forestry is gone, trapping, the anti-fur people made sure that we had no livelihood on trapping. What else do you go on? So Cameco can only do so much. So right now, in my opinion, closing with this one, we're having robust conversations with Cameco on what effective implementation of the collaboration agreement really means. To make sure Pine House reminds Cameco that it's a collaborative process. It's a partnership. So right now, I have to give Cameco complete credit, especially the CSR group. We're fully engaged in active conversations, and I can only wish that other northern communities could do the same, because I'm sorry, but what else do we have? And Cameco has done an excellent job, in my opinion, without seeming like I'm blowing smoke. I'm just stating a fact.
Thank you. My compliments to both of you for making this work so well. Thank you.
Can I piggyback on this? I enjoy reading this, and I saw this picture of, I guess, the signatories to the
Yes.
agreement. So I assume every community is now seeing this. And I got two questions. First of all, are they all going to knock on Cameco's door now and say, we want the same deal? By the way, the terms of the deal are described here pretty well as a function of production. And I'm just curious if all the northern community knock on Cameco, in Arriva, how it's going to be, can you handle it? Particularly since I also hear there's a lot of skill shortages and you're always looking for new recruits, so maybe it's a win-win on both sides for the long term. Let me start with Cameco, maybe. How are you going to handle all those communities?
Grant Goddard for the record. I think win-win is exactly the right kind of terminology to use, and Mr. Nottamagan's passionate presentation underpins the relationship that Cameco has had not only with Pine House but with other communities. The collaboration agreements are really a means of formalizing something that's been going on for 25 years, as I've noted. The strength of our organization, as you see in that Opportunity North magazine, Mr. Gitzel's on the cover, and our CSR group, our mining operations, for example, Cigar Lake, led by Steve Lowen, all of the different components of our business are active and engaged in communicating and working with the communities in the north to see that win-win solution. In terms of our path forward, yes, there's one collaboration agreement formally signed. There will be more, and we are active in discussions with the communities to put those in place. Skill shortage is something that's affecting industries in Canada, if not across the globe these days, and Cameco is no different, and we look to continue to grow the skills of individuals in the north so that they can be active participants not only in potential opportunities at Cameco, but as they grow their own skills and capabilities to reach out beyond Cameco.
So, you know, the agreement you just signed, at least in the press, was reported as very controversial. There were some members of the community that did not agree. So, what is the perception right now? Is the whole community behind you, and are there other communities going to follow your leadership?
We make sure the community is fully engaged by way of quarterly public meetings. There is no excuse for not knowing anything, and the community meetings are very well attended. The last one we had before the signing, about 2 days before the signing, was about 280 people in our little tiny community hall. That is a lot. And I'm not exaggerating when I say once the terms and conditions were fully disclosed by our mayor, we were given a standing ovation as leaders. Unfortunately, in the real world, as you know, Mr. Binder, we can't satisfy all members of the community, any community. There might be a small fringe group, and they have their merits in some of their discussions. But these particular people that we want to really address here are not necessarily long life members of our community. And I probably should apologize before using this word, but in my opinion, they're transient members of our community. They're not Aboriginal members of our community. They came in there years ago. We're trying to enlighten them to help us rather than tear things down that we're trying to build up. We're trying to engage with them to help us out, but they try, and if they don't want to come on side, we have municipal elections, and we just had one last October. Even though the CA signing was clearly imminent and it was in the air, it's very telling that 80% of the local population re-elected the same mayor and the same councillors. Now that says something. That says the leadership is strong, visionary, it's vibrant, and when 80% of your community members elect you in, something's got to be going right.
Okay, Dr. McDill, you had...
Thank you. Quick question. You reported that 50% of your population is under 19. What's the distribution under 19? Are 50% of those under 10? And how do you engage the youth in the community, who will be the next workers?
That is a $64 million question. Thank goodness for strong leadership. We've had to think holistically on everything that we do. For instance, to answer your question in a roundabout way, and to the earlier point of Cameco, we have to engage the health delivery people. We have to engage the local school, the high school, the elementary. We also have to engage post-secondary institutions such as Northlands College, Gabriel Demont Institute, all the way to Nortip, Norpac. And we also have to engage Cameco as one of the pillars under workforce development. We're currently putting a skills matrix data plan in our community to effectively gauge, okay, how many of our youth are under 15? How many of them are employable? How many of them know how to read and write? Unfortunately, the reality is we lack capacity in a lot of ways, but according to our Mayor Mike, that doesn't give us an excuse to just sit on our hands. So we are using a holistic approach and making sure our Mayor Mike and our President make sure all members of the community and the parties like Cameco and the educational institutions all come together and try and solve this problem. I don't know the demographics, but when 50% of your community, probably generally speaking, like other North communities, are under 19, there's a lot of work. As Calvin Helene said, a lot of baby boomers are about to retire. Where's the social net coming from? Who's going to get cut when the governments have to address all the baby boomers? It's probably, unfortunately, the less privileged in society. And Pinehouse, that global statement has bearing for us, meaning, unfortunately, a certain percentage of our community still relies on welfare dollars. And that's what we're trying so hard to get away from. So when that day comes, the baby boomers are retiring, and the money has to flow the right way, that Pine House is healthy, alive, and vibrant. And that's all you can ask of us. So I don't have any absolute demographics. We're not that detailed thinking yet, but to answer your question, we're trying to bring all the parties together and give all our collective heads a shake and saying, okay, how are we going to do this? We have a vision statement, as I said, and we have a CA. How do we make it all work? And I'll tell you right now, it's very tiring, but some of us don't sleep. We just keep working in a little tiny community called Pine House.
Thank you.
Yep.
Monsieur Tortiesi?
Merci, Monsieur President. Just to complement what we were saying, that traditionally, or should I say, usually the content of agreement between natives and mining companies were not public. You do, as Mr. President said, you do something that's new. Do you think that the communities, native communities, will follow this approach, which means that all these contracts, eventually content of the contracts, will be public?
They should be. We, for 3 years, close to 3 years, negotiated with Cameco, with the lawyers and CSR and everybody else. We negotiated for 3 solid years. We have always maintained to Cameco this needs to be public. It's not in our collective health if we signed a secretive agreement just because you don't want to know the neighboring community just in case you're negotiating a CA with them and negotiating with them. Frankly, that doesn't really matter to us. That's if you're negotiating with other terms and conditions, that's fine. But we at our community level have never had a closed-door policy to anything. So that's why on the day of the signing, it was public. As a matter of fact, the whole 63 pages, I think it is, of the collaboration agreement is on our website at pinehouselake.ca. Anybody in the world could read that. We've never operated under the premise that we're going to sign a confidentiality clause here and there. And as for those certain people that say there's a gag order, there's no gag order. So I hope that answers your question. But we really encourage Cameco to be like us and keep an open-door policy. Because after all, it's a win-win situation. Why wouldn't society as a whole encourage a northern community like Pine House, a determined northern community like Pine House that has a little bit of gray matter between its ears, that could effectively negotiate on its own? Thank you very much, and that's what we've done.
And my last is, do you as a Pine House Business North doing some specific trainings to expand your contract opportunities by new contracts or by new expertise, to develop a new expertise?
I'm not sure what the question is, but we have joint venture partnerships with our economic development arm, namely people like Nuna Logistics, Dowland, and within those partnership contracts, we make sure people like the Nuna people, don't just, let's just not have in my language to them is, this is not a brown skin game. We're going to have terms and conditions of the partnership agreements that say you will employ X number of people and on the job as well. And by the way, we're going to enroll 12 people at this trades course, and we fully expect out of those 12, 50% you will hire.